What happened was we sent trained actors and actresses, as he mentioned, to 30 communities nationally. So from Miami to San Diego, we sent them all over, and these were where veterans were accessing VA taxpayer funded services, and throughout those experiences, we saw in the first, this was a 3-year study. We saw in the first 2 years that the Black actor and the more senior actor were significantly disproportionately less likely to access. And no one was racist to them and said, "Oh, you're too old," or "We don't accept your kind here." It was none of that. But it was just bureaucracy racism. It was just creating more hoops, more forms needing to come back and do this. And effectively, we made some tweaks and changes. And in year 3, this was a good news story, but the Black actor, as well as the senior, the more older gentleman who was portraying a veteran, saw no variation in terms of barriers to access. So this was a good news story. I will say, unfortunately, that has stopped. The VA stopped that. And that was right at the time that I resigned during the pandemic to come in. So to answer your second question about where it stands, I mean, just homelessness in general across the country right now, I don't think anyone can deny it's going through the roof. Affordable housing is just not there. It's not available. And we're seeing increasing numbers of that. And that's really why I'm running this nonprofit out of government at this time.
To help prevent or make it help homelessness, people that are on the street potentially seek other resources.
Sure. And that's a great question. And I think policymakers and churchgoers, just everyone, do-gooders, have been asking that question and wanting to, make a difference. And really homeless, is just what it means, right? It's without a home. So the key, the solution to getting someone out of homelessness is to get them housed. There's a lot of theories and there's a lot of evidence that support different viewpoints. And I think many of them have a lot of good virtues and a lot that can be learned from it. But at the end of the day, it's about helping someone stabilize their housing. And, I'm happy to go in what that doesn't look like, what that can look like. But, to end homelessness, we've got to get people into housing.
Starting out as a child, why do you feel mentors are important, especially when someone is a child?
I think mentors are important because they really help kind of guide, the next generation of young talent, of young professionals, and just, everyday citizens. I think it's important because as we grow and as we get older, we align ourselves with people who have a breadth of knowledge, whether it's in education, whether it's in sports, whatever avenue that, kind of catches your interest. And along the way, there needs to be sort of mentors to kind of walk you through the educational aspect, but also the personal development growth along the way. So I think for me, mentorship is very important because it's an essential staple for our youth. Yeah, I had a few mentors growing up. I had a mentor while I was in high school that I did sports, and I had a mentor during and after grad school. Still keep in touch with him. Just an array of topics. I think once you've grown into a comfortable position with your mentor, the conversations don't necessarily have to be stagnant. They don't have to be specifically about work or specifically about life. It could be an array of things that you could talk about. And being a mentee to a very successful mentor, I get a lot of insight as to his day-to-days and how he handles interpersonal relationships. Well, there's a huge difference between that. The people who you're close with, essentially your tribe or the people you're in community with, those are people that you have day-to-day or weekly interactions about things that, essentially hold your inner circle together. You can get good advice from those people. They typically are individuals who are within your age range, some a little bit older, some a little bit younger. But when we talk about mentorship, we typically talk about an individual who's a lot more seasoned, a lot more mature, who has been through the obstacles of life, right? Whether it's school, whether it's business, whether it's volunteering, community work, things of that nature. I think the kind of life that a lot of people wish they had, I've had both parents present in my life. And sort of, I've gotten a lot of insight from both my mother and father. However, along the way, you come across people who have a lot more experience, a lot more knowledge, and
reported live. They're going to, when they was doing what they was doing, when they was doing Desert Storm, his dad did what he did. You know what I mean? And the son did it too, and they wanted everybody to watch, the whole world to watch what they was doing to people publicly. It's kind of both ways it goes, But, you got fake news, you got real news. You got, like Trump was saying, there's fake news. So a lot of things be reported falsely. You never know what's real and what's fake nowadays. I think that's why social media social networking and social media is so good today, is because we can actually get down to the meat and potatoes of a situation and see what's actually real.
Between having influence and someone having clout.
All right. Clout is just, you went viral. You got a little clout. People know who your name is. An influence is someone that's like, they affect you. They're creative. You start to act like them. You start to say their sayings. Everything they do is like, oh, okay, it's what they say, do, act, move. Everything is about them. That rubs off on you in a great way. That's an influence. Like, for instance, my brother be like, hello. But to hear 10 other people on Clubhouse, kids in the background saying, hello, hello, and then it's like, wow, that's crazy. That's an influencer. That's somebody who's influencing other people's kids. The kids love it, right? So that makes him a great influencer. And you have other people that's just on social media. Nobody's acting like them, trying to be like them, looking up to them. When you become an influencer, and people start to just, like, everybody just imitate you. But a person with clout, that's just someone, okay, you got some type of status, but you don't know what type of status. It could be good or bad. It just went viral a few times. But influencers is like way bigger than, you influence the world. People just want to, like Kim Kardashian, that's an influencer. She don't rap, she don't sing, she don't do nothing. She just influenced the world by her looks and what she doing, her lifestyle. But then you have Beyonce, who has clout, a lot of clout.
You find out about this fire base up the road called Morales Fraser, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So
now
yeah.
we're gonna get into it. That there's some guys up the road. What's the first thing that you hear about Morales Fraser, and who are they, and what are they doing there, or what are they doing outside of there?
Yeah. So one of my very first experiences that I can remember and talk about is there was a really big firefight. You guys from Morales Fraser were involved in. And meanwhile, I'm at my base at Kutzbach with the 101st, and there's these other group of guys that we didn't know at the time that's in a really big firefight, ended up needing some assistance. I remember the special forces guys went out. There was a group. Yeah. So, and in my experience, I'm sitting at that base and, I'm waiting around basically for a call that they need a medic. And, so my day is kind of slow. And that particular day, the radio was just going off. Guys are running back and forth from the talk at our base. SF came in, they got some supplies. One of the other medics from 101st, from 4th Brigade, came in and got some supplies. And then, next thing we knew, there's a group of guys from a base down the road that's in a really bad firefight. They have a couple wounded. There's a couple Afghan army or police, whoever you guys were with. They have some KIA wounded on those forces. There's a couple Americans that were wounded. And so all of a sudden it was a real tizzy at our base, scrambling, that quick reaction force to get guys out there and to help with the fight. I didn't go out to that firefight. All I remember is that an element on my base left and went out, and then a group of guys came back And it just so happened there was quite a few of the Pennsylvania National Guard guys that came back. The Special Forces medic out there responding to that big firefight. And, he came back and there were some wounded and we had to call in medevacs. And I don't even, at this point, I don't think the 101st knew that it was a National Guard unit. There was an element of, infantry guys down the road that was in this valley that was on the other side. So we were a bigger element. Like I said, we had the American Forces, which was a company of us. We had the small Special Forces group. There might have been a dozen of them, if that. So he came out to visit, and then was really curious about the guys down the road. And from what I remember, our colonel, when I say our colonel, the 101st colonel, with whatever element he had, drove the 20, 30 minutes, however long that drive was, to Morales Fraser, and to visit what turned out to be you guys. And all I remember is that when he came back to the base, the Kutzbach, that he spoke about coming across guys that were wearing shorts, sandals, and had beards and T-shirts, and and obviously he had known that you had been in this big firefight. And
you've been in, and there's people that have been shot at, obviously in the States, and been, that's very similar. But me wanting to be there so much faster because of what you guys were experiencing, going through. You know what I mean? Because
absolutely. When you're trying to reply to or respond to someone in need, I mean, it's like time almost stands still. It might be 2 minutes, but to you, it feels like 200 minutes.
A firefight, and the sun was setting like that. I'll never forget that moment. And then I know we got there and we were spot on, and then you take it from here, because that was one of the biggest moments for you. And thank you for wanting to be open and honest. Go ahead.
Yeah, even to touch on what you just said, it's we said, we spoke about it earlier, but what a unique perspective. It's both sides of the story. So, to paint the picture, you're the one responding to my squad in a firefight, and one of, my squad's guys getting hit. I still to this day believe was the most, if not the most, it was one of the most chaotic events and ordeals I had ever been through. And it started off a very simple mission for my squad, that we were going to go out to a certain checkpoint on that supply road. And that night turned into anything but that. And I couldn't even, it's one of those, I couldn't break it down by the minutes because everything is, so chaotic. But I do remember we got there, everything was quiet. We set up the gun trucks in certain positions to look over the fields that were on the other side of the buildings. We had our security, keep us safe. There's a handful of us that dismounted. And I very distinctly remember to this day, I went and sat down on the steps of the Army building, and there were these two kids sitting next to me, young kids, couldn't have been any older than 10 years old. And I was just talking to them the best I could, and we were interacting, as best we could for people that didn't speak similar languages. I remember there was these two kids, and again, I don't know how long we were at this checkpoint when all hell broke loose, and there was an RPG that came basically over the top of the building that I was sitting in front of, came over the top of the building and hit a tree across the street from where I was. And it just so happened that Reed was sitting on the steps of that building, feet away from where this RPG hit. So, as a soldier, when something like that happens, your immediate reaction is to take cover, figure out where it's coming from, develop a plan, and take action. Okay? So the very basics of being a soldier is that right there. So from my point of view, when that incident happened, is there were kids next to me. They ran into the building. The other civilians, the Afghani army or police, or whoever they were, they ran into the building. I rolled to my left on the stoop, And I crawled into the building because there was a little doorway.
A real good friend of mine had got into an altercation with a guy earlier in the day, but I wasn't there. I didn't know about it. So when my friend left, I came back later on that day, and the guy that my friend had got into altercation with came back looking for him. And the guy knew that me and the guy he got in an altercation were really good friends. So he approached my car. I was on a payphone. He approached my car, I guess, looking for my friend. So when I look back, me not knowing that he had got in an altercation with my friend earlier in that day, I was like, what are you doing by my car? Like, get away from my car. So he ignored me. So I told the person I was talking to on the payphone that, hold on. So I put the phone down. So I walked towards him and it's like, man, did you hear me? He said, get away from my car. So he proceeded to turn his back on me and took 3 steps. And then he turned around and started shooting at me, pow, pow, saying, die, motherfucker. That's the only thing I remember. He hit me like 3 times, but I had a big gold chain on. The doctor said it saved my life.
I'm sure it sounds like he shot, obviously, he shot you in your back.
Well, he shot me. I think the first bullet went to my, like, in the front, and then he was in front of me. Like he had walked away from me.
Okay.
And then he turned back around towards me. So once I seen the gun,
you turned.
Like I turned.
You turned around for protect yourself.
Yeah, and to run. Yeah. But like he ended up shooting me. Like the ambulance came, and as you can tell, I made it. But the guy, fortunately that I didn't die. But that same guy we found out later was like a serial killer. He had like killed like 5 other people and attempted murder like 11 people or something like that. His name was Momo from around Montana, off of Montana Avenue in DC. Yeah.
Wow, man. Thank you for sharing.
You know how powerful it is when a stranger tells you out of the blue something good about you when you don't expect it? It can change. You can feed on it the whole day, if not the whole life. That somebody just comes up and gives you something positive. And especially those who you feel they're already like having those demons, those methane bubbles, you know? Yeah. And what I also sometimes did when I felt it's not enough, I had a little box with Band-Aids, like silly kids Band-Aids with like heroes on it, or dinosaurs, or rockets and mermaids and princesses and whatever, right? Just whatever was there. And I opened this box and I said, if you like, you can choose a Band-Aid so you can put it on your ache, right? And you know how many people just giggled or cried and felt like, wow, somebody sees me, that I have a pain, and offers me a Band-Aid, even if it's not physical,
right?
If it's psychological. But Band-Aids are more for your psychological need than for the physical need, right? To have somebody protect the wound, which is open and is vulnerable to receive infection, right? So you shield it. So what I suggest, and I do it in my community here as well, and by the way, it's not as peaceful here in Hawaii. We have more murders now since COVID because people are more homeless. They have more mental disorder because the lack of community and connection, that nobody gives a damn, right? And just they're crazy. So they like push them out, which makes them even more sick. Because in the old days, you actually, when people were challenged mentally, psychologically, emotionally, or physically, they were not expelled, put into prison, mental institutions, or abandoned for the family. They were actually pulled into the center of them all. And what people did, they put them into the center and told the person what they love about the person. To remind them that they're much more than the pain they believe they are. And I think this is actually could change our entire, because we've been programmed to only seek and scold for the weaknesses we are, rather than to be reminded for what a miracle we are and what a light being we are.
but I just have I've always had an insane fear of failing. In school, I was, to me, just anything above, or, anything below an A was just like absolutely unacceptable. I don't know where that expectation came from. It wasn't from my parents. It was self-inflicted, but I just had an insane fear of failure. So for me, my drive just comes from that, just always in the back of my mind, like, you gotta be, like, mediocre is not okay. You have to be, no, I don't want to say perfect, because that's not possible, but you just strive to do everything you do, try to do it as best you can. That's just kind of my drive. I don't know where it comes from or like why that is necessarily, but it's just kind of how my brain's made up.
Is an introvert more capable of making more money than an extrovert, or vice versa?
I mean, off the top of my head, being in sales and having a lot of relationships, that's my main job. Is actually, I'm the account manager or one of the account managers for our landscaping maintenance business, and that's like my full-time day job. Relationships are everything. Relationships have gotten me everything that I have today. Relationships with employees, relationships with customers, vendors. So I would say an extrovert would probably do better in today's business world.
How do they this all comes down to dollars and pennies.
Because,
right?
man, if somebody likes you, they're just more, male, female, it doesn't matter. They're more likely to give you discounts on volume. They're just going to be more willing to negotiate with you, and whether, like I said, whether it's a customer, whether it's a vendor, anything, if you're well liked, it just makes it just greases the situation.
Afghanistan, when I was over there, I think I told you the whole situation. Through multiple deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan, through what I was doing.
Yep.
I found out I had sciatica. It was the horrific pain I ever felt at Fort Bragg, down in my left leg. It was horrible. I later got over to Afghanistan. He was a lieutenant colonel, chiropractor, but he was, that was his job. And he's like, you'd have to go to Germany because they didn't have an MRI machine in Bagram, Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Later got back. I was able to deal with it. Got back and found out I had initially an L5-S1 herniation. Moving forward into 2000 and in the 15, and then even before that, because we got back in 08, I had to deal with that. I've been dealing with it since 08.
Yeah.
But they found out like it's L5-S1 herniation with degenerative disc disease.
Correct.
I'll let you speak on that in a second. But before I get there, the lady that I saw, she's younger than me, and she knows who she is. I saw her through a chiropractor where I'm from in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. Yeah. After I would see a chiropractor, I saw her. And then after that, she had her own business outside and she would see me. I've then found out about Trigger Point.
Right.
And
that's a big
where
one. That is such a good one. But go ahead.
And I just want to finish the story because it really brings home for, the podcast, but then definitely allowing me to share, my injury. And obviously with someone that has treated me like yourself, and can I bring context and explain to the audience, you're the professional, and me coming to you about almost 7 years ago at this point, I remember now, what she did. And I told you I moved here so I couldn't see her anymore, but that trigger point and then the injuries that I do have, how you've been able to help me and things of that nature, and other clients that suffer from different sports therapy or combat injuries, or anything that related to that type of physical activity. Right.
And this is exactly why I decided to become a specialized therapist within sports therapy and recuperative medicines. So basically what Trigger Point does is it helps you particularly with things like degenerative disc. Now, when you get degenerative disc, it basically means that the disc between your bones is starting to deteriorate. So it's starting to thin out, and all of the liquids that are inside are starting to become crystallized because it has nothing else to become. So you basically, in all essence, we have arthritis of your lower back. And that puts a strain on all the nerves, which is why you were feeling that sciatic pain, right? Yes. Then you had that herniation. So not only did you have the degenerating disc, but you also had
L5S. Not to interrupt you. L5S1.
yes. But not only did you have that disc particularly deteriorating, but you also had it slipped out of place.
Right.
So you're getting so much pain.
Right.
Because the nerves are just, for lack of a better phrase, they're fucking choked out.
Right. Oh, you're good.
You know, and then
You're fine.
so what trigger point does is it basically tries to all the muscles around the area that's affected. Trigger point starts releasing all the muscles so that you have a better way of moving. It's not so restricted. Your nerves can actually breathe. And then with a little bit more focus, we can probably get the disc to kind of go back into the direction it's supposed to be. But unfortunately, because of your deterioration, it's going to come back.
Can you tell the people out there the pain that it feels like when you first go through? So she did it to me before I met you.
Yes, yes.
And that was in 2010, I want to believe, 2009, when she started, when I go through the chiropractor, and then I saw her outside.
Yes.
That was very painful to go through trigger point therapy.
Yes.
Could you explain what to someone that never been? It's not massage. You're not going to get a massage like a Swedish massage. Can you explain to people, like, it's not like, oh, I'm going to go to Massage Impy and get a massage today.
Right. No. Trigger point, when you first start receiving trigger point, because it is a therapy, it is a therapeutic type of massage. It's not supposed to be roses and flowers and gumdrops, and it's none of that. It is a painful process because we have to get to your pain through your pain, and there's no way around it. So we have to literally loosen up all the muscles around the pain, and then we have to go into the pain to loosen up the muscles within it. So, when someone like you who had these injuries comes in to get a massage, you already know, like, you always tell me, you know what to do. It's that left side.
Right. Oh, no.
And I already know. But, when you first came to me, it's not like you were, I felt really bad, because I was on the second floor and I didn't have elevator. So you had to walk up those stairs, and you were having spasms.
Yeah, I had spasm back then. Yeah.
And so even before the trigger point happens, you're already in pain, brother. Like, so you're sitting here literally just spasming out at every step. And the only way I could treat you is go around it first and then go into it.
And I want to talk a little bit, if you don't mind, and I hope this is a good segue into why is stretching so important?
For someone like you, it is paramount. I'm not even going to say just important. It is paramount. It is a necessity to do stretching because you have a deterioration. And in order for you to alleviate that deterioration, you have to do basically the stretching so that you can open up the area. So when the more you open up, the nerves are able to breathe better. So you're constantly stretching. For you is not just one of those things that you do to make you feel better. No, it's one of those things that you do so that you can move without being restricted.
Right.
And when I did that stretching to you, remember at the end, we felt that little pop?
Yes.
Okay. So everybody's like, oh, so you're a chiropractor too? No, that's actually just
That's not a bone. No, not to interrupt you. That's not a bone.
Correct. That's not a bone.
That's a ligament.
That is a ligament. And basically that little pop is basically just releasing gases that were within that ligament and holding it out.
See, a lot of people don't know that.
And that's called